Welcome to the MHP Exchange Podcast, where industry veterans Frank Rizzo and Eric Busadil generously share their wealth of knowledge in their new podcast dedicated to the manufactured housing space. They tackle tough questions to provide valuable insights for those considering investments in mobile home parks. If you're seeking answers in the manufactured housing space, this podcast is your go-to resource.
We have another exciting episode on the MHP Exchange Podcast. Frank Rizzo here. Joining me is Eric Busadil. Eric, how are you?
Good morning, Frank. Good morning, Bernard.
Well, nobody knows that Bernard's here, Eric, so we're going to...
Not yet, but they will.
They will. So before we get started, this is the MHP Exchange Podcast brought to you by the MHPExchange.com. That is your spot for opportunity news, education, and entertainment in the MHP space. And don't forget to check us out on our video series, Trailer Park Turnaround, on YouTube. So where you could see Eric and I down on site and what it takes to really turn around one of these trailer parks into a manufactured housing community. But today, as Eric mentioned, we do have a guest with us. A guest that, and one of the things that Eric and I always talk about in the office is how do we increase operational efficiencies? Eric, how often do we have this conversation?
Every day.
Right.
Every day, constantly.
It's a constant issue, and it's a constant milestone that you want to hit to make your communities more efficient. If you make them more efficient, you can obviously minimize expense, you increase the NOI, and then you have that way that you can add value to your community. So if you're looking at, you own a community today and you're looking to create efficiencies, this is going to be a great episode for you to listen to and take some notes with, because joining us today, we have Bernard Hasten from SpeedRead Technologies. How are you today, Bernard?
I'm doing well, but just to be safe, it's Hasten, Hasten, Hasten.
I mispronounce people's names on purpose.
I'm sure you do, but we're all good. Whatever you say works.
So Bernard, before we get started, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about who you are and where you've a little bit about your company, SpeedRead Technologies.
So I want to thank you, Frank and Eric, for letting me join you guys today. So as mentioned, I'm Bernard Hasten. The company is SpeedRead Technologies. We've been around now for 25 years, 25 years actually this month. And we've been in the market for selling a fully automated meter reading system. We can connect our technology to water, gas, and electric meters. Primarily, we work in the water space, of course. And the company's founding, I had no knowledge. I had no idea about this type of industry, this type of business. But I happened to be on a trip in Israel in the late 90s. And in the 90s, I went to a municipality that installed this technology to read 6,000 water meters. A person did not have to walk by, drive by, visually read, or do anything. The guy sat at his desk, and all of the technology and infrastructure was in place in the municipality. And within a few clicks of his computer in 1997, he was able to connect to a data collector and, using his software, download information on all of the meter reads. And truly what they were monitoring was every drop of water in the municipality. And this blew me away. I thought this was the coolest thing ever. And I brought it to America 25 years ago. And our family business was in real estate. Our family owned a bunch of, we were in the multifamily space, apartment communities, some office space. And we saw the need for installing meters so that every resident, every tenant could pay his own utilities, exact usage, not an estimate, not a guess. This is installing the meters and the technology, and it really worked out well. The conservation was huge. The return on investment was huge. And we ended up submetering our family portfolio of over 6,000 units for all water and a handful of the properties for gas. It was a huge benefit to us. And the only loser, the only group that complained about what we were doing was the local water utility, because they weren't hitting their budgets anymore because consumption dropped at all of our properties around 25%. So with that springboarded us into doing more properties. And early on, we looked at manufactured housing. And we had a handful of communities that asked us to help us automate their operation. And instead of a pad of paper walking around visually reading, sometimes crawling under homes to read meters every month, you can't do that. So we automated, and we've been part of the conservation and industry for over 25 years. That's the story.
That's it's a big part of owning a manufactured housing community. I mean, look, in real estate in general, one of the things you want to try to do is look at utility reimbursements. And I think, when somebody has to pay for what they're using, they're obviously going to be more conscious of what they're using, what that impact is, and obviously look to conserve. But in terms of, getting the adaptive use into the space, like how frequent do you see that now, or is it there's still a lot of room for growth in the MHP space? Yeah,
tremendous growth and opportunities, because quite frankly, if you think about it, and think about it from the owner's perspective, even if you put in a water meter where you want to monitor that consumption, how you monitor it, how often you're reading it, there's a lot of advancement. There's a lot of opportunity to do things better, to do things more efficiently, where you are truly monitoring every drop of water on your property. So
think about it, Rick. And we've purchased 20 something properties at this point. I don't think we purchased any properties that had digital meters. There was not one property.
No.
So just think about it like that. And I think the mom and pops that still own it, right, and have owned it for 20 years, and they're doing it a certain way, they're not installing meters, from what you understand. It's the individuals like us or the larger companies who come in and try to upgrade and update properties that typically come in, and so for the most part, I mean, we're 0 for 22. So just there's probably still a tremendous amount of growth opportunity for him.
So Bernard, and I see the benefit for the property owner, right? So the property owner gets that, and they have the ability to get some utility reimbursement, right, back from that. Where does the benefit fall in for the resident, right? And then, how do you coach your clients in explaining that benefit to them?
Great question. As Eric was mentioning, you acquired some properties that didn't have meters before. So if there is no meter and that owner has an opportunity, for the residents themselves, wouldn't it be fairer to have someone be paying for their exact usage versus the monthly rent includes water and sewer? If the monthly rent includes water and sewer, there's no incentive for that resident to do anything, to conserve. He can use as much as he wants. He's paying the fee as part of his rent, or even in some cases, they're paying the fee as an estimate. And some residents may waste water, some residents may not. So the way you coach the owner is, this is the fairest way to do it. Everyone is accountable for their own usage. Everyone can control their own usage. Don't take a 20-minute shower. Take a 5-minute shower. Your water bill will be less. And when the owner, if he's not sub-metered, when his water costs are going up, and in the last 5 years, they've gone up tremendously. Inflation and other factors, water and sewer costs, and it is both water and sewer. For the owner, it makes more sense to have every resident pay for exact consumption, exactly what they use. So it's the fairest thing to do. It's the most appropriate thing to do, as opposed to an estimate. So if everyone's paying a flat fee, and let's say it's just a husband and wife in a home, and then the next home has a family of 6, and everyone's paying just a flat fee, that resident of 2 is paying for the resident of 4 or 6. When you look at the overall spectrum, so you sell it by the fairness. That's how we always did it.
And I'm going to ask, because we've put in meters in a number of our communities because of this issue. We had either a master meter or we had a well, and so now you had this consumption, and you wanted to make sure I could identify leaks, I could track where this performance is going, and then to do that. How have you seen, because we've seen some challenges with getting the residents to understand that, hey, there's a separate bill, right? And you're going to be responsible for these charges separately from maybe lot rent or what you're paying for rent currently. Like, what have you seen works best in terms of, execution of the rollout, right? And I think that's something that we constantly are looking at. Okay, this is a great idea, and we understand the value. It's communicating that to the resident and getting them to buy in. So, like, what have you seen best from the operators that you've seen in 25 years? Like, best practices. This is how you should roll it out. This is what you can expect over the next 3, 6, 9 months. Because, I mean, Eric, would you say, like, you're not going to have everybody willing to pay this day one? Like, that's realistic.
Right.
I think, people are creatures of habit, Frank. And this is what I've seen. When you buy a community and people are used to doing things a certain way, and they've been there for 10 years, and it's a flat fee, and you introduce this. My take is that it's just going to take time for them to acknowledge, and for the parks that we have put meters in, over time, you do see people starting to pay attention, and it's a constant talking to them and pointing out to them, hey, you had this leak. I mean, I can't tell you how many times, how many residents we had that couldn't believe, no, it's not possible how much water we're using. And it actually was how much water they're using. And then, I'm not so familiar with your system, Bernard, but I'm sure that there's a way for you to, on your system, is there a way for you to, for a resident to, or a park owner to see when the consumption is happening and how much of the consumption is happening? I mean, it's amazing to me when you see that, because, at nighttime, the water goes off, right? And then in the daytime, it goes on. And, that's the big, that's the big crux. And when you explain that to a resident and they see that, and again, they got to see it multiple times, and you got to talk to them about it multiple times. And I think ultimately they appreciate that their bill is going to be lower, and they realize how much water they're using.
So let me just respond in the first thing that you mentioned about how you roll it out to a resident. I've seen it done 2 ways, and there's pluses and minuses on both. The first one is once the system's installed and you explain to the resident that they're going to get a water bill, one way that's been successful is when you send out let's say the rent payment or the amount that they have to pay for the space, don't have water and sewer in there. Have a third party, maybe it's a third party billing company, maybe it's a service provider that you're using. Show it as what looks like a water utility bill. And the money that they're paying for that, so they pay you the rent, they pay the water and sewer bill to somebody else where they understand it to be the water utility. Convince them that you're paying a water and sewer bill because this company or this provider is giving you the water and sewer, so they don't think it's coming to you, the owner. In truth, it is coming to you, the owner. It's a reimbursement. But so I've seen it done that way, and I've seen it done the other way where it's in the rent, here's the rent amount, and here's the water and sewer bill, and it's all included in one bill. Sometimes the residents understand and know that, oh, I'm paying it to the ownership. So it's really a judgment on the residents' feelings. So like I said, I've seen it done both ways. One can be more effective than the other, and that's one way to do it.
So you would have almost a separate entity put up.
Exactly.
Would you do that prior to? So like, hey, you're going to do, we know, hey, in the next quarter, we're going to do installations of water meters. We're already set the standard that, ABC Water Company, LLC, that's who you're paying the water bill to.
Yes.
And they're going to be rolling out the meters. So you're kind of setting the stage prior to. And
exactly.
You're basically bifurcating the payment prior to the installation. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, that's one way that we've seen it work. The residents take the.
I think we lost Bernard. Okay. So what you're suggesting is that you essentially set up another entity, and prior to rolling out the meter, you're already preconditioning the resident to bifurcate the rent to, hey, this is lot rent and this is a utility charge that there's a separate provider providing.
Yeah. In addition to that, what we did was freeze the rent increase. So let's say you go ahead and install all the meters and technology, but you haven't charged anybody for water and sewer. You leave that in place for the first 30 days. But you give everyone notice. You give them a 90-day notice that, hey, you know what? We're not going to increase your rent coming up when your renewal happens, but instead you're going to be responsible for your own water and sewer. You're going to pay that bill either to this third-party entity, or it's now going to be added to your rent. Here's your water and sewer charge. And once you implement that, once you put that all together, like we said before, the consumption is going to drop. The residents are now accountable. So you're going to see that drop within the first 30, 60 days. But they'll get used to start paying their own water and sewer bill based on their usage and not all their neighbors. So that's the way to implement that aspect. And Eric, you also asked the question or mentioned about how the management, how the ownership can be monitoring the usage with softwares that we have. We provide the owner. That's one of the differentiations of SpeedRead Technologies, our company. We work directly with owners, and we work with the owners to give them all the tools they need to make those decisions and to be able to monitor and manage their own property. So they're not relying on third parties to give them the water bill and show the monthly usage. You have access 24/7 to the usage of every single unit. You mentioned before night flow analysis, day flow analysis. During the day, there's consumption. Starting at 11 p.m. till, let's say, 6 in the morning, there should be very little usage. But if you see usage, systems like ours will notify you, either email or a text, that there's a suspicious usage or a suspected leak, high usage in a particular unit, and you know that every 24 hours. So you're on top of it. You can take care of problems, leaky toilet, something leaking underneath the home, whatever the case may be. The property owner has access to our software, and you're not relying on anybody else to get that data. So
does the customer, right, the end resident, do they have access to that as well? Can they log in, check their account? Do they get that ability?
They absolutely can. But what we do is we work with the owner to say, owner, do you want everyone to have access 24/7 like you have? So yes, we have the flexibility to either do that for the owner or let the owner monitor it themselves and check it every 24 hours to see what's going on. You have access to do either one using a system like ours, but the owner's in control of it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, when you're looking at systems like this, and I think, Eric, you hit it on before. It's especially when people aren't used to making that separate payment. Maybe it's been all inclusive, or they just didn't realize that this was.
I think that's what it is. They don't realize.
But it's a constant communication and education almost. One of the things that we've taken to do, and Bernard, I don't know if you've seen other operators do this, is before we send out notification of, hey, we're going to shift to a meter system and you're going to, pay on usage, we actually show them this is what the county or the city is charging, right? Yeah. This is what the rates would be here, and typically we try to, we're below, right? Maybe we might be even below that.
Well, you're allowed to use the same rate as what the city or the local water utility is charging. You can charge that minimal residential rate. It's the lowest rate that they offer. That's the rate that you're using for the billing purposes.
Do you see often operators charge more than that bill that the city does? And I've heard different sides. Some people say, we've had discussions with counties, and some counties have said, we want you to charge higher. Does that make sense to you?
No.
And then so I'm curious to know.
So state regulatory agencies, and I've been doing this for a long time, you're not allowed to charge 1 penny more than what the city's charging you. If your water and sewer bill for a month comes out to be $10,000, and if you're with all your fees and all your charges and the usage are charging $12,000, it is possible if someone complains to the state regulatory utility agency, you could be in a lot of trouble. You're always supposed to charge less, and usually you are charging less. If you have common area, a clubhouse, a manager's house, or something like that, and that's part of the 10,000, then you should be charging less for everyone's individual consumption when they're paying based on their exact usage. So I've never seen people getting away with charging a lot more. I have seen billing companies charge for water and sewer and then trash and other things, and then the whole utility cost is a lot more. I kind of shy away from people doing those kind of things, especially if they call it a utility charge and everything's included. So one thing to mention, we don't do billing. We allow property owners to decide how and who they want to use for their billing for each of the residents. But unfortunately, we've seen some people take advantage. That's inappropriate. And once again, if you see your water and sewer bill, you have to be charging your residents less than that.
Yeah, I think when you operate a well system, the counties want to see that that's running in the black, right? Because they want you to know that if there's an issue that you have reserves. So they want that to be profitable, right? So in the event that a well breaks down, you're not running it at a loss and there's no reserves there to replace what's there, right?
That's true. That's true. So there is a differentiation for wells. You're absolutely right.
So if you're piggybacking a city water supply, that's something separate. But on
well,
they want to make sure that there's there is a additional revenue because we've had pumps break down. Recently we were in an area where there was a storm. The well house came down, right, because of the storm. So if you don't have the capital available to do that, you could really have impacted residents. So I think that's a differentiation. If people are listening, that's
and I want to say that again for people who are listening, so they totally understand that, because it's very important. If your property has city water and city sewer, what Bernard is saying is that you should be equivalent to what the city is charging, not more. If you're bringing in city water from city sewer, but if you're running a well system, right, you're maintaining the pumps, the well, the well house, the inspector, the monitoring of the actual water. In that situation, it's okay to make some money because you need to be able to pay for things when they come up, and things always come up.
Correct, but you can't charge more than what they're charging locally in the city. So you have to look at the county rates and say, okay, these are the county rates. I'm operating a well, and that's where you can say, well, we're saving the resident money because we're operating it, but we can still operate it with a profit for reserve, right? So if something comes up, right, there's something.
And Bernard, here's something I'd like to hear your take on, and I'm sure people would also like to understand this. What about the sewer charges, right? So obviously, I've seen some city sewer charges pretty expensive, right? Where they're getting charged
could be more than the water.
More than the water is based on the water consumption, and that could get very expensive. What is your take for someone who's operating like a septic system, and how an owner should be billing someone for sewer if they're operating a septic system or a lagoon system, what has a lot of expenses associated with it? What is your take on that?
So, to the best of my knowledge, you're supposed to at least get somebody from the county or from the utility regulatory agency to give you the guideline of what you can charge back for those types of operations, for the sewer and septic sewer and all those kind of operations. So you're right about that, but counties usually have those requirements and those regulations, and you have to check there.
So every county's different, basically.
Every county's different, correct.
The recommendation is if you're going to bill someone for sewer usage, you should check with the county and have a discussion with them, and
yes,
document it so you have it before you start billing someone. Okay.
Correct.
And every county will have a list of charges. It won't be a surprise. They will be able to tell you this is what the charges are, this is what the fees are. And so, but you do have to make that contact with the local Department of Health to make sure that you're in line with that. Bernard, and then you mentioned before that your company doesn't do the billing, or you allow the owners to do the billing themselves. So what would an owner do? Like in your system, and we've seen different operators in this space operate a little different. Do you provide the meters? Is it a service charge? Is something that an owner is, making a capital investment up front? Like how do you guys approach the market in this way?
So what we do is, of course, depending on the number of units they have, the owner a proposal for the technology, doing the installation. We do turnkey. We do everything turnkey, and we also give them access to our software. The software is a service that shows them the meter reads, the consumption management. There's a lot of different bells and whistles with our software. Like you mentioned before, night flow analysis, day flow analysis. There's a lot of analysis you can do on your property. So the property has all of that, and they have all the data. They have access to that data. That data can be moved to a billing platform, and it's just a couple of clicks. Move it to the billing platform, into your rent roll. Here's all the residents, the lot numbers. And like I said, you can set up your own billing using whatever billing software you choose. The different companies out there, Rent Manager, etc., they have national utility billing. All of them have access through you to our system, so it integrates into the billing platform, and you can do it, or like I said, you can partner with somebody else to do that billing. You're in charge.
And is there like a tie-in, a length of period when someone's using your system? Like, hey, they come in and there's obviously there'll be a contract, but like how typically have you seen a big, like when people come in, they're using this system, your system, for a number of years? How does that work?
Yeah, so actually our transmitting units, we warranty everything for 10 years in terms of the transmitters. There's a 10-year battery life. Once everything's installed, and whether it's good for our company or bad, once everything's installed and everything's operating as properly as it's supposed to, you're managing it for the next 10 years. You have the access to the software, you have access to everything. Of course, if there's troubleshooting, if there's something you're not understanding, we have a support team in our office giving information, support, help to owners and managers. We don't take phone calls from the residents. We only work directly with the owners. So if they have a problem with a resident, we go through and look at everything with them and support them. But they have full access. They have full access for as long as they're using our system.
Listen, and if anybody out there is listening and they want to get more information on your company, on your technology, and what applications that they might have, and this doesn't have to be just MHP, right? It could be office, it could be multifamily, it could be
multi-tenant, multifamily, whatever the application is. I mean, we also have applications I mentioned before for electric and gas. We do boat marinas as well, where there's a pedestal of electric and water. We're a fully automated meter reading system and platform. We're hardware and software, and we figure out solutions as best as we can for a property to control his own property. That's what we do. One other thing, if I'll just jump in with just something to mention. We are not a water meter manufacturer. We're not a meter manufacturer, but in terms of water meters, you should know there are two types of water meters. One is called a pulse output meter, and some of the manufacturers use pulse output meter. It's like an odometer to your car. The other one is called an encoded register. And most utilities around the country, the majority, use an encoded register. The numbers on the register are the exact usage. There's no tenth of a gallon missing, and like on the pulsed output, but the meter itself on an encoded shows a register, shows the numbers and digits, and our transmitter reads exactly those digits for an encoded. On the pulse, like I said, you could be off some element of water consumption. I'm not saying it's bad, it's just the way that they make those meters. And when you're working with us in a manufactured housing setting, we strongly recommend using encoded meters to get the exact digits, get the exact reading, so there's no dispute with the resident. And we've shown this many times with residents in present looking at their meter, that you can see the meter, you can see the digit in the software, and one way to initiate a reading immediately is to swipe the transmitter with a magnet, and in less than 5 seconds, it updates exact readings so that you're seeing the exact reading. So yes, there are disputes. People say, this can't be right. This meter is not working properly. And you can see through a 5-second test, it's exactly correct. So one thing to mention, when we sell in manufactured housing in RV spaces, we only use encoded meters. So just a point of information.
Okay. And if anybody wanted to reach out to you, find out more about your company, how would they do that?
So you can go on our website, or you can contact us directly. I mean, SpeedReadTech.com is our email address. But hopefully from this show, people can, through you, or get in touch with us. And we're happy we cover all 50 states. So we're happy to engage and work with however and whoever would like to work with us.
Well, we appreciate it. Thank you, Bernard. Any closing comments, Eric?
No, nice to meet you, Bernard. A lot of good information you gave us today. Thank you. Look forward to talking to you soon.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate both of you, Frank and Eric. Thanks for the time. And for your listeners out there, there are ways to help you and do things more efficiently and make things better for your properties.
Well, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, we talk about this being a business of nickels and dimes. And you have to, especially as all our costs are going up across the board for infrastructure, for whether it's taxes, whether it's utilities. And the only way people will monitor it more is if they take ownership of it. And to the point that Bernard made before is that when people realize their consumption, they realize, well, maybe they can save. And that translates into savings for resources for the community at large, but it also provides a savings for the potential savings for the resident, but also a savings for the owner, and allows you to really focus your time, energy, and attention where it needs to be to really add some additional value to the community. So if you're not metering your parks, it's definitely something you should do. I mean, we as you talk about efficiencies, it's one thing that we're looking at. And then having that communication with the residents afterwards about why this is important and how this will impact you and how this can lead to actually potential savings down the road, right? Because if I'm not just raising everybody's rent to cover that cost, but you're going to pay as you go. So that's some great information.
You're absolutely right.
If you liked this episode, share it on Spotify or iTunes with somebody and drop us a comment. If you have additional questions that you have about your mobile home park and how you can maximize the value there, reach out to us at the MHPExchange.com and you can schedule a conversation with Eric or myself. Until next time, everybody, happy investing. See you on the MHP Exchange Podcast.